Hello and welcome today on Real UFO Stories. We'll talk about Algiers UFO encounters. Today again with your host, Colin Rivas at colinrivas.tv. Well, hello people. We are here back again with Colin Rivas, and today we'll talk about these really interesting stories about the Algiers. We now move to Africa. We have been talking about Japan and some of the Asian UFO encounters. Many round-head paintings portray strange people with round, featureless heads and formless bodies. Eric von Daniken controversially described these paintings in his 1968 book Chariots of the Gods as representing prehistoric extraterrestrial astronauts who had somehow influenced human evolution. But let's move on to the first case, and we are now being transported into 1914, the summer of 1914. There are some upheavals in the Algiers, Algeria, Blida, in rural location, several small humanoids, and these figures appear to locals and also French settlers. Very interesting case. It's a close encounter of the third kind, large sphere, luminous, and appear on Le Forum de la Phologie from France. And Blida, Algeria, in the summer 1914, at night, right before the declaration of World War One. A French settler was walking back home from the fields after turning on the irrigation valves when he watched a large luminous sphere flying over the fields. Then landed silently only a few meters from him. Afraid, the witness quickly hid behind a hedge and was able to see several shore figures exit the sphere. The figures wore helmets and light gray colored combination suits. They spread about on the field, moving very quickly, appearing to collect samples from the ground. After a few minutes, the little figures re enter the landed sphere, which then took off and quickly disappeared from sight. The next day, other neighboring farmers reported that they had seen a luminous sphere flying over the fields just right the night before. And now we move to another location, and we're still in the Algiers. Enormous UFO seen during the Algerian War. And think about this one in Bunamana, just around night, close encounter of the first kind. And this was 350 meters wide, the UFO, roughly about 100 to 100 feet above the ground, disc shape. And a legionnaire, a military man, was on the sentry duty at the Foreign Legion camp at Monamama during the Algerian War when he saw an enormous roundish object descending. It stopped when it was about 35 to 40 meters above the ground and began to hover there, motionless and silent. He estimated it to be as much as 350 meters wide. The witnesses feel that something most unusual happened to him psychologically. And there is a whole report about this, and it's very, very interesting if you want to read it. Uh, this is in 1958 by Joel Mesnard. You can look it up on the internet. Tranquilizing visitation at Bonamama. And it said the following: the representation of the craft also is seen by the soldier on the full report that you can see here I think I'm gonna share it with you too. Um, of this enormous UFO, and you see it there on the report. I think you can see it now. Yeah, there, there you see it. Yeah, there's the huge ship that was painted. And that was near where the future oil fields were gonna be built. Yeah, so we see this right here. An extraordinary UFO sighting was reported one night in March 1958 during the Algerian War at the Foreign Legion camp at Boamama in the South Constantinople. In South Constantinople, yeah? Very, 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 very interesting. We go on. The sole witness, Legionnaire NG, the name is eliminated, was on the sentry duty outside the camp. The site where he was consisted of a 45 emplacement dug out of the ground, lightly armored and equipped with a telephone connected to the camp. The night was cloudless and the moon was shining. All was silent and a desert landscape. No large scale operations were being carried out in the area at the time. Our friend NG. NG, who had been in the Legion for over 3 years, was not feeling especially anxious. He was sitting on the ground near the IE trench and had his rifle. If anything unexpected happened, he was supposed either to fire his rifle or call the camp um, by telephone. But we still have more. Suddenly, a few minutes after 12:30 at night, something did happen. What it was that happened, we cannot say for sure. The witness remembers seeing a positive physical phenomenon of enormous size, very physical. But he feels that something most unusual happened to him psychologically, and he freely admits that there might be as well a difference between what he sincerely remembers and what actually took place. He began with a whistling noise, the sort of noise you hear if you blow into the neck of a bottle. The sound seemed to him to be coming down from the sky. He immediately looked up and saw this huge roundish object descending. It stopped when it was about 30 to 40 meters, sorry, roughly 100 to 130 feet, just right above the ground, and began to hover there motionless and silent. He estimated it to be as much as 350 meters wide, over 1,000 feet, as seen by him slightly from below during the arrival and takeoff phases. It seemed to be elliptical in shape. Why, independently of the perspective effect that makes this disk look elliptical when observed from a point outside the disk center line. Its span might, he thought, had been in the neighborhood of 250 meters. He estimated the distance between himself and the nearest edge of the object a little bit more than 50 meters, roughly 150 feet. And when I asked Monsieur NG, that was the name of the legionnaire, to extend his arms towards the ends of the object as he recalled seeing it, he held them out at an angle of about 100 between them. This estimate would fit quite well with the estimates given above of his size and his distance from him. The object was surrounded by a pale green light, and an intense conical beam of emerald green light was coming from the center of the under part towards the ground. The legionnaire NG did not fire his rifle, nor he pick up the phone, and he just remembers staring at the object for at least 45 minutes, so three quarters of an hour. The pale green and emerald colors were the most beautiful, relaxing, and fascinating colors he had ever seen. Legionnaire NG had forgotten all about the war, and all nervous or psychological tension had gone from his mind. He was just feeling happy. Then came the noise again, like somebody blowing into a bottle, and the object started rising gently until it had reached a height of about 120 meters. Then it flew off to tremendous speed towards the northwest, climbing up as he went. But we still have more people. Um, what the legionnaire then felt was a sort of sadness and disappearance of this beautiful sight. After a few minutes, this feeling began to fade, yielding place to a return of his ordinary state of consciousness. Until his full mental faculties were back, he quickly picked up the phone and reported what he had seen to the main office. To his great amazement, however, the officer at the camp simply replied in this manner: "All right, we'll see about it tomorrow morning." Really disappointed at the officer's reaction, the legionnaire NG continued his watch until he was relieved by another man in the early hours of the morning, and he again reported his experience, and at this time more attention was paid to him. Some of his superiors were inclined to believe his story because this legionnaire NG, then aged about 30, was a well respected soldier and was considered serious and reliable. The majority, however, thought it was just a case of psychological trouble caused by the tough conditions and the stress of the war in the desert. But a careful investigation was carried out at the scene of the sighting. NG recalls with a smile that the officers even examined the sand with a magnifying lens. No footprints, no marks, no alien material was found in the area, and no smell either. However, probably more for medical than for ufological reasons, the witness was thoroughly questioned by officers. He stuck to his original story, and the affair was considered to be quite amazing. He was sent to the military hospital at Val de Grace in Paris. There, he was kept for a week under dose scrutiny by neurologists and psychiatrists, and even an electroencephalogram revealed nothing unusual. The conclusion of all the doctors was that the legionnaire NG was in a state of good physical and mental condition. His health was perfect. He was fit and he had not been notably affected by strains caused by the wartime service in Algeria. He had no tendency towards drinking and was considered to be competent for service in the Foreign Legion, which means an especially hard way of life. Indeed, no man with a tendency towards dreaming or science fiction or with an overdeveloped imagination or an critical mind would he selected for service would he be selected for service in the Legion. Monsieur Legionnaire NG, who's today a civilian, is obviously a man with a strong sense of realities of everyday life and seems to be just the opposite of an oversensitive type of or a poet. What happened that night at Buamana? It is just very hard for us to believe in the physical features of the reported sighting, as it is for us not to believe in the sincerity of the witness. So I have been unable so far to find any evidence from military sources regarding his alleged experience. The Val de Grace Hospital in Paris does not keep documents about patients beyond a period um, of 10 years. The size of the reported object was so large that if it actually was there, the witness claims to have seen that. It must have been visible from the camp at an angle of about 60, yet nobody else reported seeing it. When asked him about the possible reasons for having been the only witness, NG replied that it is in no way astonishing since most of the men in the camp were asleep in the barracks. At the time, there was a legionnaire on sentry duty at the opposite end of the camp, and he could have seen the UFO at an angle about 40 degrees, and yet that sentry reported nothing. And Monsieur Legionnaire NG does not think that the slope or the irregular pattern of the ground could have been sufficient to render the phenomenon invisible from the camp. So the witness seems to be conscious that something quite extraordinary happened to his mind. Since the experience, he had felt a certain degree of interest in flying saucers and recalls having read about UFOs in his papers and magazines. In any case, the subject definitely dogs are not upset him, and his experience, however extraordinary as he may seem, has not notably changed his life. This is the Boawamama case, devoid as it is of physical evidence, but so puzzling in many respects that invites comparison with a number of other cases. And what this person wrote of the witness actually leaves much to our imagination, too. Is just one more of those very special UFO sightings which lead us to think that ufology may be somehow related to some obscure, also psychic uh, phenomena. Yeah. But we're still in Algiers. Congo. Now we moved to Algiers in 1970. Algeria sighting. This is quite amazing too. In January 1970, around 9 p.m. at night, and here we have another sighting, and this was of a sighting near a urban area, a five-story building on the west side of a major intersection and houses on the east side. And this is how the story goes. Check it out. Yeah, you can check the source from ufoevidence.org. It was a bright orange color, big object. Yeah. Um, Here's this. January 1970, the elevated areas of the Algiers, where I then lived and had been ever since pondering about this extraordinary technology. The illustration that I have provided is pretty accurate in terms of colors and may be close to correct in the number of crafts in the fleet. Fleet was about 1,500 to 12, no, 1,500 to 2,500 feet overhead, or maybe less. So each was sized to a football field, and I was playing soccer with my brother and practicing head passes. Next, I next thing I see these large bright objects in the sky were moving together. They flew as a matrix-like unit with the back row crafts moving at right angles to come to the front of the fleet. Each craft in the back row would exit the back row to the left or to the right, depending on which edge of the fleet it was closest. Their maneuvers were done at a very, very high speed and seemed like a cartoon. Unbelievable. And when they were all reset to lead in the front row, the newly exposed last row would repeat the process. And it went on and on. The acceleration was absolutely amazing, especially when going at a right angle to suddenly get in front of the fleet to rest their speed at the constant speed of the fleet. A very, very quiet fleet. No noise at all. I was lucky to be able to observe them as they flew from the west to the east. So we're still in the Algiers, 1970. Extraordinary. They're playing football, soccer, and they see this sighting of these ships, yeah, these spaceships, yeah, coming at 2 o'clock and then doing strange things, right? Other things that were extraordinary was a small blue flame they had at the back of each craft. As it was generated from propane, the flame was blue and had a shape that was as perfect as the pilot flame you see on your gas stove. The luminous orange color of the crafts did not have an identifiable source. No other lights were present. They also looked flat, but they were overhead and not close enough to see any side of them. These objects were rectangular with rounded corners, moved at good speed, and it took about 2 minutes from the time I saw them overhead to when they disappeared behind eastern horizon obstacles, buildings, trees, or hills that were around. Long enough time for many people to observe them, and many have actually. This includes the Observatory of Algiers that announced it in the national newspaper the day after they too observed it, and they are located 2 miles east of where I was on the top of the hill. Enormous UFO seen during uh, and several UFOs seen in 1970. Right there, you have it. And we're still in the Algiers in the Saharan Desert. There's more to come. We got another sighting from 1975. 1975 Africa sightings, and this is around January to March 1975. Several sightings here, yeah, and around evening time, around 7, and this lasted over 2 hours. Objects were very bright too. Source is Fawcett and Greenwood. The UFO cover formerly titled Clear Intent on pages 79 80. UFO is reported were and seen by multiple witnesses, and the objects landed and took off. They were also spotted on the radar and seen visually simultaneously. This message was also sent to Henry Kissinger, the very notorious Henry Kissinger from the American Embassy in Algeria in 1975. He says Secretary General Ministry of Defense, call Abeline Latrache, asked me to call Ministry March 7, purpose call to ask if could shed light on the strange machines which had been maneuvering over Algerian airspace in recent weeks. He said the story started last January with the appearance of three American journalists in Béchar who announced they were there to cover arrival of balloon which taken up from California. Said this presumably reference to journalists who had come to cover the Malcolm Forbes proposed flight, which had been uh, which had been canceled or aborted at the very last minute. So thereafter, Algerians began seeing strange objects in the sky. They had seen near military installations by responsible people, even. And Algerians were asking us first because sightings had occurred so soon after appearance, American journalists said. He said object had been seen 5 times, usually about 7 and 7:30 on one occasion, and it had remained visible well over 2 hours. Then another one, March 6th. Object has very bright light. He kept comparing to the headlight of a car, which obscures its shape. Object maneuvers strangely and has seen to land and take off. Sightings like not last night about 19:30. I mean 7:30 p.m. Was first seen by radar and secondly visually. It was about 15,000 meters altitude. On other occasions, they were at 2,000 meters of altitude. They're going very fast, over 2 and 3,000 miles per hour. Aircraft surveillance and wonder whether these new sightings were results of the Sixth Fleet maneuvers or some sort. And there were no aircraft in the area, machines, balloons, or anything else. American use in Algerian space without explicit permission of Algerian authorities is not permitted. Nevertheless, I will immediately send a message to appropriate civilian and military authorities asking if they had any relevant information. So they sent this to Henry Kissinger, and they said they didn't know anything. You have serious reply to give Latrache, and he has already rejected my theory that object is satellite. So they were neither satellites or that in case sighting of coast, it was searchlight bouncing off clouds, said Parker. Action requested. That's the other one. Yeah. A lot of things happening in Africa in Sahara. Now, a land of oil fields, a lot of French settlers, French domination there, and let's see another Algerian sighting here. Yeah, this is from 1975 too. So 1975, there's another encounter in Oran, alien encounter late at night, Oran, Algeria, a humanoid around 170, 180 meters tall. looking like a human male of about 30 to 30 something years, and glowing white. Is a close encounter of the third kind. This one is. The source comes from Danny Brei's the project Bekazin, and the description is about Oran, Algeria, 1975, late at night. 11-year-old boy Jamet Nejar was sleeping when he was awakened by the sudden trembling of his body. He looked to the large window and saw there was a figure there staring inside. This figure was described as about uh, 1 meter 70 centimeters tall, so about 5'9", 5'10" in feet, looking like a human male of about 30-35 years, and the humanoid was glowing white. The figure seemed to be oscillating slightly from side to side. The boy thought he was hallucinating and ran out to the yard to look for the luminous white figure, and it was nowhere to be seen just when he went out to chase it. So, this is another interesting story right here. The Dennis Breeze Project Picassian. And we're going to finish in today, 1988. In 1998, in the Algiers, they have a lot of things going on there. 1998, there's a sighting in a Tindouf, Algeria. In Tindouf, Algeria, around 1 in the morning. So this is very early in the morning. It's almost night. Rural area. It's a close encounter of the third kind too. Size of the object is around 10 meters, and distance around 4 meters from the witnesses. Yeah. So this happened while in the army on July 28th, 1998, at 1 in the morning, within 5 kilometers of the town of Tindouf in the Algerian Sahara, with a comrade. He suddenly saw a light coming towards him. Wow. Remember, there's a lot of movements here by the troops and all that. Algeria is quite complicated and complex country. Yeah. So let's go on with this story. Very very interesting. He suddenly saw a light coming towards him. The two men were quite afraid because they had gone downtown without asking permission from their chief, and probably initially thought that they were being sought for. They thus hid behind a sand hillock while the light approached right in front of them within 4 meters, the display appearing to them like some science fiction movie. Imposing and beautiful, amazing. For the witnesses, there was no doubt that it was a UFO, if only by its size, almost 10 meters. It was hovering 150 meters above the ground level, with a light with front and other at the back, different from other lights, which seemed to go down and project on the place in a square beam or square section. He had also a light on the top of another one below, both described as beautiful. The craft also had windows with dark lights, obscure or darker, and they did not hear any engine noise at all. Only sound compared to that of a simple ventilator or somebody whistling. The two men then fled, the witness looking back when he was at the distance of 30 meters from the UFO. Then he saw that the UFO was stopped in front of a hill and that a meager thing came out of it that he could not see well, but he had a small bump on the head. He then fled again, running as fast as he could. The wind specified that it was full moon and the visibility was very good. Neither him nor his friend had dared to tell the story by fear to perhaps consider them crazy. Well, that's it. That's a very incredible story of these very. So they saw even a humanoid. Well, that's all for today, people. Thanks a lot. This is Colin Rivas from the colinrivas.tv. You can go there, colinrivas.tv, right here, or you can tip me if you want. I do not monetize if you see this on YouTube, Facebook, or whatever. Go subscribe if you want to TV and real UFO stories from Algeria today. Uh, Extraordinary UFO encounters. Yeah. Your host, Colin Rivas here, TV. Enjoy. Bye, guys.